In this video, we will look at sequential coalitions and pivotal players. We have been looking at coalitions from the previous module. There's a major difference here. Sequential coalitions are coalitions that contain all the players, not just 1, 2, 3, or 4, in which the order players are listed reflect the order that they joined the coalition, so in which manner they came into that coalition. We will use angle brackets instead of curly brackets to distinguish sequential coalitions. So in the previous module, we used curly brackets to talk about different sizes. In this one, we're going to use these angle brackets. So if I put something like P3, P1, P4, P2, P5, that would indicate that there is a 5-player weighted voting system, because you always list all of the players. That's key to notice here. And it would mean that P3 joined this coalition first, and then P1 was next, and P4 was next, P2 was next, and P5 joined the coalition lastly. Okay, so where are we going with this? Well, first thing to notice is there's lots of ways to order this. This is a little diagram showing you what would happen if you had a 3-player system, right? A 3-player weighted voting system. There's actually all these different possible orderings. Notice in the first diagram at the top left, you would have player 1 first, and then player 2, and then player 3. That's the first ordering. But then in the next one over, there's only a slight change. Player 1 is still first, but we've changed P3 to be second and P2 to be last. And then as we go through this, you can see all the different orderings of the possible people. So there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 orderings. So even with 3 players, there's 6 different sequential coalitions, right? Same people, different order. And why does it matter? We'll discover that throughout this module. First thing to notice is the number of sequential coalitions within players is equal to n factorial. So an example is when we had a 3-player coalition, as we just did, or a three-player weighted voting system, 3-player coalitions, the number of those equals 3 factorial. Well, you may not be familiar with a factorial, but a factorial is a way of saying that you start with the number given. In this case, it's 3, and then you multiply by the whole numbers less than 3 all the way down to 1. So it'd be 3 times 2 times 1, which will give you 6 different sequential coalitions. If you have a 4-player coalition, for example, and we're going to take a look at one later in this video, there would be 4 factorial different sequential coalitions. It's already quite a bit. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Notice I started with 4, went down to 1, would be equal to 24 different coalitions. If you had 5 factorial, it would be very large, and something that we will not do by hand in this class because it would require a computer. So if you have 5 factorial, let me grab my calculator here, right? It's 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 would be 120 different ways to order 5 players. We won't be doing that by hand. So we're going to define a second thing, which is a pivotal player. A pivotal player is the player in a sequential coalition that changes a coalition from losing. So it changes it from a losing coalition to a winning one, all right? And what do we mean by that? Well, when you start adding members to a coalition, the first player that joins might not have enough weight to make it past, given them whatever the quota is in the system yet. And so we'll look at, here's a picture of that. Let's say that you have all of these players that are joining the coalition. The first one joins, you're still losing. Second one joins, still not enough. Third one joins, still not enough. But finally, maybe when the 4th player joins, there is enough weight to get the quota. That would be called a pivotal player. Now, the pivotal player could be the first person if it's a dictator, or it could be the very last person if the quota is very high. So it just depends on the system. We'll take a look at some examples of that. Here's example 1. Consider the weighted voting system where the quota is 16. That's our quota, just as before, quota. And our players have weights 9, 8, and 7. Write down all the sequential coalitions. A little typo there. And in each sequential coalition, there it is again, determine who is the pivotal player. All right, so we will do that. So you see the list from above, but here we go. Player 1, player 2, player 3 is our first one. And then again with player 1 first, player 1, player 2, player 3, player 2. Those are the two possibilities if player 1 goes first. Then what if player 2 goes first? If player 2 is first, you could have player 1 and player 3. And then you also could have, if player 2 goes first, player 3 and then player 1. Lastly, consider what if player 3 is first in the coalition. Player 3 could be player 1, player 2, or last one, if player 3 is first, could be player 2 and then player 1. So what we're going to do in each one of these is decide who is pivotal, all right? And we'll just circle that in red, all right? We're going to circle a pivotal player. So the way we'll do that is we'll look at the weights and decide when is it enough. So let's take a look at our very first one here at the top left. We look at P1, what is their weight? P1 has a weight of, if you look up here, what player has a weight of 9. Is that enough to meet the quota? No. So then player 2 joins the coalition. They have a weight of 8. And now we have 9 plus 8, which is 17. That is enough to meet the quota. So that means player 2 is pivotal because they changed it from from losing to winning. Let's take a look at the next one down. All right. Same thing. Player 1 is first. They have a weight of 9. That's not enough. Then player 3 joins. What is 9 plus 7? That's 16. That's enough to meet the quota of 16. So in this case, player 3 is pivotal. All right, as we go through these, let's take a look at the ones in the middle right here, right? Player 2 joins. That's a weight of 8. Then player 1 joins. That's a weight of 9. And finally, that's 8 plus 9 is 17. That's going to meet the quota. Now, you might think it's always going to be the middle player, but it will not be the case in the very next one. I'm going to do one more and then let you do the last two. Let's take a look at this next one in the middle here. If player 2 goes first, then they have a weight of 8, right? There's a weight of 8. And then player 3 goes next, and they have a weight of 7. In this case, we're only at a total weight of 15, which is not enough to meet the quota. So we actually have to add in our last player before we exceed the quota of 16. In this case, player 1 is pivotal. Okay, I'll have you take a look at these last two and decide who is the pivotal player in each one. All right, in our last example, and we're only going to do a portion of this example, not the whole thing because it'll be too long. Consider the weighted voting system with a quota of 5. The weights are 3, 2, 1, and 1. Same problem, write down all the sequential coalitions. Still have my typo there. And in each sequential coalition, determine who is the pivotal player. Well, this would be quite tedious. I told you before that if there's 4 players, then there's going to be 4 factorial different sequential coalitions, and that would be 24 different sequential coalitions. This would be pretty hard to list out. So if player 1 goes first, we could have player 1, player 2, player 3, and player 4. But we could also have player 1, player 2, player 4, and player 3. And the list would go on. We could have player 1, player 3, player 2, player 4, and so on. There is a systematic way of keeping track of these, but I'm going to kind of stop there and see that there's going to be a whole bunch of these, right? Those are only the ones if player 1 goes first. What if player 2 goes first? What if player 3 goes first? What if player 4 goes first? So you're going to have all these different sequential coalitions that you can do depending on who comes first. And in each one of these, there's going to be a different pivotal player. I'll just take a look at one with you, and then I'll ask you a couple examples on the video. All right, so in this first one that I listed there, if we look at it, if player 1 goes first, they have a weight of 3. That's not enough to meet the quota. If player 2 goes next, that's going to be a weight of 2, and 3 plus 2 is 5. That is enough to meet the quota. So in that case, our pivotal player is number 2. So we'll take a look at a few examples of who might be pivotal, and then maybe you have a pretty good understanding of how this works. That is what a sequential coalition is and pivotal players.